What do you do like for these artists as an artist manager?
A
Cover
lot.
all bases.
PR, I've got to do the booking agent role, I've got to do work with publishers and radio and media artists that gig like every week. The good opportunities come further and further away. Everyone knows everyone, and that's like the biggest piece of advice I could give is like,
Hello and welcome back to Sound Advice. I am joined this week by Mal from Mali Anthony. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, how are you?
Yeah, good. It's really good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit more about Mali Anthony.
Yeah,
what is
so Media is my company. It's an events company and an artist management company. More so moving down the artist management road now. Focused on mainly supporting like female-based musicians and artists, LGBTQ plus artists, but also working with a wide variety of genres. And yeah, it's all about supporting local and building from the bottom up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where did the name come from? Because I've got like a theory on this.
So I'm rubbish at naming things, and I was like, oh, I'll sit on this for days. And it got to it, I had an event booked, and I was like, oh my God, I just need to name it. And someone was like, literally just put like 3 letters of your first name and 3 letters of your last name together and whack media on the end. So Media was born.
Mali Anthony, I love it. So just tell me about like the journey so far. Like, how did you get started?
Yeah, so got started working with a friend's band in first year. Kind of thrown into it, didn't know what to do. It was like, you're in the WhatsApp group now, sort us out. And it was like, oh my God, wow, I've gone from, I wanted to do music. I was like a guitarist, still play guitar, but I was like, that was what I was focusing on. And it's kind of like, wow, now I'm the other side of the stage. So I got them a gig booked at Round the Corner, worked with Round the Corner. They were great. Kind of like started working things out, trying to understand the industry a bit better. I'd never been a manager before, let alone done events, so it was like a whole new few months of learning everything. Spent my time, then started building a roster, and then in the last year and a half, close to 2 years now, it's just grown and grown. And last year I was lucky enough to put on something like 75 events throughout the year, which it's only me doing the team. And yeah, it's just grown. It's been great.
Yeah. Is artist management something you always wanted to get into? It's sort of something you just kind of ended up in?
So I never thought about it, to be honest. I come in quite naive and was like, I'm just going to play my guitar and session and that's me. And as much as I love playing, I'm a bit nerdy and I love just like sitting at my laptop, learning things, typing away. And I don't have that with performing live. So I took some time, research, and then found that, got put in with my mate's band. And yeah, I loved it. It was just kind of, yeah.
So tell me about who's on your roster at the moment.
So my roster at the minute, I've got Isabel Metal, I've got Esme Bridie, Otter Brown, Oya Paya. There's a few others as well, but they're in the works at the minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there like a genre-specific focus on any of this, or is it sort of just broader?
It's broad. It's like really broad. If I like your music, I'll work with you. You know.
It's a good attitude.
Yeah.
So like, how did you mentioned that it started with like managing a friend's band at uni? Like, how did like most of the relationships on your roster come about? Are they something where you approached them, or did they sort of come to you looking for management?
A lot of mine have come to me. Literally, I've been out at gigs, met people, just got chatting, and then they're like, oh, what about me? Send me your stuff over, and it's kind of happened that way. I have with Esme, it was the opposite. I approached her, I'd seen her live a few times, and I was like, she's great, let's do something. So kind of just like built up the courage, went over and was like, who are you working with? And grew from there. But yeah, that's mostly how it works in terms of finding a roster.
Yeah. So like, speaking of how it works, like I just want to like get an overview of what do you do like for these artists as an artist manager?
A
Cover
lot.
all bases.
It's like a lot of background work that people don't really see. I think people think an artist manager is there just to be like the face of it, of like the behind the scenes and kind of be like, you should do this, you should do that, but it's completely not. It's like I'll sit down with an artist and be like, what is the end goal for this? What do you want to achieve? Let's put steps in place. And I've kind of like took on the role of not only a manager, because it's just me and I don't have a big budget behind me. It's like I've got to learn things like PR. I've got to do the booking agent role. I've got to do like work with publishers and radio and media and all sorts. So it's kind of like I do a bit of everything. I'll book photo shoots, or I'll be the one doing the photos. I'll book in radio interviews. I'll be contacting. Like yesterday, I spent my Sunday day emailing about 50 radio stations with one of my artists' upcoming releases, and I was like, had to do the press release, get all the photos together for that, get like a good email written, which takes time. But yeah.
Let's say, is it a lot of emailing?
Oh yeah, that a lot of emails. Believe it or not, a lot.
How many emails do you think you send in a week?
Gosh, that's a really good question. Probably upwards of 100. Wow. Yeah.
I feel like that's one of those ones where you almost don't want to admit to yourself the answer.
Yeah, it
like,
was.
Do I send 100 emails a week? That's mental.
Yeah, literally. But.
So like, how do you sort of describe like the relationship that you've built with your artists? Because obviously some of them have come to you, you've come to them with some of them. But like, how do you sort of manage that relationship and like balance the sort of creative side and the business side of what you and your artists are doing?
Yeah, so usually it'll be like, let's meet up for a drink or a coffee. And if I can talk with them on a level where we get on, even like just friends, it's great because it's like, I know I can work with you. If I can talk to you like a friend, that means we've got a good starting relationship and a good line. You know, there's nothing worse than going and talking to someone that's dead awkward and then you're just like, I don't know what I can do from here. You have to really enjoy it and get on with the person. Really helps as well. Like the ideal like artist is someone who's really motivated and is like seeking me all the time. You know, like constantly like, well, not constantly, but like messaging me quite a lot, being like, what do you think of this? What should I do with this? Can you help me with this? Asking for my advice and my knowledge and like utilising me as a person. Ultimately, I can't, at the end of the day, do it all for the artist and they just sit there in their bedroom because otherwise it's my vision, not theirs. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, you talked about like the relationship that you have. Like, do you think you sort of look for a friendship and like a relationship in that way first before you get into managing any artists like that?
It's a mix, I guess. So when people approach me, I never commit instantly. It's always like, we've got to meet up first for this to work. The only one where we hadn't met in person, we'd FaceTime, was with Isabel, but we just really got on over FaceTime and on the phone, and it was like great. I'd never commit to working with someone that I don't know. Like first, I have to. You can't really grasp someone through an Instagram profile or an email. You have to see them in person and chat with them on a level to understand it.
I mean, I think that's just as important on the artist side as it is on the management side, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, it's not just one way from my side. It has to come from theirs as well. Yeah.
What do you think makes for a successful partnership between an artist and a manager? What does that look like?
Both are really motivated. You know, the artist has got really good, like, ambition. They really want it, you know, because there's a difference. A lot of artists are like, oh, I really want to do music. And some artists are like, I would do absolutely anything for this career. And you're looking for them artists that would do absolutely anything. There's a difference between wanting something and needing something. And if an artist has got that need, it really, like, things just are so easy then.
Yeah. I think that's quite a good way of looking at it, because I think it's important to obviously have that drive and that ambition. But I think that's also probably a good place to have an artist manager, because when you set, as you said, you up for like doing anything to like make your career work. I think that's sometimes when artists can get exploited a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's probably those kind of artists, probably the right kind of people to have a manager in the first place.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's, you know, your manager's meant to look out for you, and artists, when they need something as desperately as like that, will do like literally anything, work with anyone. So you've got to have a good team behind you to look out for you. It's not just the managers, but you know, if you're on tour, your tour crew, if you're an artist of that level, for example.
I mean, is that something you've dealt with, like with your artists, sort of I don't know, maybe have like a gig offer that was like massively underpaid or like attempted to be exploited in that way?
Yes. So you get a lot. It's quite common actually. There's a lot of offers for like charity work's probably the most common, and obviously everyone wants to do something good for charity. But when you get like with your artists, 8 charity gigs come through, and it's like, we can't pay you anything, and it's a bit like, well, I am providing a service. It's for a good cause, obviously, but at the end of the day, your music is how you bring the money to the table. It's how it feeds you, you keep a roof over your head. It all gets fed back into your career. There's no time where if you're not investing in your music, it doesn't work. So I think charity gigs is a really common one, and it's such a difficult one because there's that bit of like tear or like tug with it where you're like, I really want to do it because it's for a good cause, but I also need to be able to eat tonight. So charity gigs is one, and you also get like your newbie promoters, which is like great. You know, everyone needs to start somewhere.
You don't have to name any names. Do you have any examples?
Wow. So like, I had a new promoter message a few weeks ago for a headline, and they're offering a really low percentage split on tickets. And I looked at the bill, and the other 2 bands had like 2 posts on the account, 10 followers each, like literally just new. And they were like, want your band to headline, and we'll give them like 30% of tickets. And yeah, 30% sounds great, but for a band that's probably going to fill that venue compared to the other with the 10 followers, it's not a good deal, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
But everyone starts somewhere. I was probably doing that when I first started out because you don't know till you try.
I mean, I've definitely been in my band. I've definitely had we've done a gig with a promoter that seemed pretty trustworthy, and then just never got paid, and there was like a whole big scandal around it over the last few years.
Yeah.
I think we all know who we're talking about.
Yes.
It's the charity thing's interesting because I think the way I look at it is that I don't think there's anything wrong with doing charity gigs for free. I don't think you're necessarily devaluing yourself by doing that. But I think the way I'd look at it is sort of do a couple of charity gigs a year maybe or something, and like really like try and do the charity gigs for the charities that like really mean something to you and that you'd actually care about. I think if you do like 8 charity gigs a year, 10 charity gigs a year, you sort of eventually become a free artist, or like become seen as an artist that will work for free, and then some of those paid opportunities might not come around as much.
It's exactly that. It's about working it out in moderation and prioritizing your gigs that you get. It's the same as well with artists that gig like every week. It's great. Like, I know as being a musician myself, love being on the stage. Any opportunity to perform, let's go. But ultimately, you kind of sacrifice yourself with the bigger promoters because they're looking for people that don't gig often that will bring a pull. And if you're gigging every Wednesday with your originals band, your ticket pull's going to be less than what it is if you were gigging once a month even.
Do you think once a month is that right balance then? Because I think over gigging is definitely a problem that I see quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, again, moderation. I'd probably say, once or twice a month. Obviously, it depends on the opportunities that come around, but, you know, supports, probably once, twice a month, max. Anything more, you're kind of committing yourself to every week, and then the good opportunities become further and further away.
Well, a lot of the bigger promoters as well have, I don't know what it's called now, but like the blanket thing where they don't want you to do a gig like 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after.
Yeah.
So then if you overcommit yourself to doing like some gigs for like smaller promoters, which obviously you should do gigs for smaller promoters, that's fine. But like if you overcommit yourself to doing too many gigs, then you can end up missing out on a bigger opportunity because you've overstretched yourself. Yeah,
definitely. It also falls in the reverse where I've seen bands pull out of shows to work with these bigger promoters because like it's a great opportunity, and it is, but you still need them small promoters to fall back on because the big ones probably aren't going to be giving you the opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. They're going to give you the one, sit on it for quite a while, and then be like, oh, they did all right there, let's bring them back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you're pulling out of a gig for a smaller promoter, unless it's like, obviously, if you get offered to play the M&S Bank, you're going to pull out of your smaller gig.
Yeah.
But I think word, especially in like smaller cities like Liverpool, I think word spreads quickly if you're unreliable.
Yeah.
And then if a promoter that you work with, you pull out at the last minute and they're not happy, I'm pretty sure they know a lot of the venues and a lot of the other promoters in the city, and they might warn their friends against using you.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think it's just Liverpool. I think you'd find it anywhere in the music industry. Everyone knows everyone. And that's like the biggest piece of advice I could give is like really watch your relationships and treat people well and treat people nicely. Because as soon as anything bad happens or there's a bit of a negative attitude, that spreads like wildfire. Like you wouldn't believe it. I've been in group chats before for like just local area stuff where someone's been added in and then within 30 seconds they're kicked out and it's like, they did this with me. And then it's like, wow, there's 70 people in this chat. That's 70 people with connections to probably another 70 people each, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So on events, you under Malant have been putting on a lot of events recently. You've got a gig coming up on the 7th, right?
Yeah, this Wednesday. This is quite a big one for me. It's my first one with Loud Women, who promote women at the front, all female bills. So yeah, it's great. I've got a lot of female creatives coming in to do like photos, videos for it. It should be a really nice, wholesome, supportive night and networking night as well.
Yeah. Was a sort of female focus to Malant Media always going to be like part of what you wanted to build?
So it was a mix. When I first started, I wasn't working with many female acts, but I was kind of like, oh, I know how difficult it can be, and I really want to be there. And there's some really talented women in Liverpool, like really amazing musicians. So I kind of sat down and had a think, and then I got like my first few female artists come through on my roster, and it was like, what can I do? So I started putting on like female events every so often, and it's kind of grown now. Like with working with Loud Women, it's opened a door for me there, and it's been great. Yeah, it's just great to support people, seeing them on stage.
Yeah, I mean, I was at a panel. I can't remember the name of the group, which is really annoying, but it was a group of female DJs that like they're a DJ group, like they go around together. And they were basically saying that they wouldn't have a male manager anymore because they had a male manager before, and there were just like certain things that they didn't like get, and like to like I think they'd like been in clubs where they'd like been catcalled and things like that, and they were like, we want you to speak to the promoter, and they were like, well, we can't speak to a promoter every time that happens, and you're like, well, it's one of the issues affecting you. And like, do you see part of the role as a manager of being like almost that protective shield a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. You know. You've got to protect your artists at the end of the day. I think any creative, not just like musicians, literally painters, photographers, we all think creatively and we're all very emotional, you know. It's kind of a blanket statement, but everyone is. And as like a manager, you've really got to put yourself in the firing line and take the heat for the artist. You've got to back them with everything they do, and you'd hope you'd receive that same support from them as well, if it comes down to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were describing their new manager as like their de facto mum at this point because like she's like always out to bat for them and like support them in these kind of issues. Go back to like the event stuff. Was events like always part of what you wanted Malant Media to be, or was it sort of something again a bit like the management in the first place that you kind of fell into doing because of opportunity?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of started more with the events, because when I was thrown in like managing that band that I first started with, I didn't really know what a manager did. It was kind of like, oh, they must just get the gigs. So it's kind of like the booking agent, really. And it was only as I went on I actually understood, oh, actually, there's a lot more to this role, with like the more research I did. So kind of started off with events, and then I worked up at a bar where I did the events in-house for them. Through a big event for artists that didn't get to play a festival, so through my own festival for them, and it kind of just grew. And then I got like loads of messages through from people. Oh, can I play one of your events? They look so cool. Can I do this? And I found it's just small things. You know, every promoter does things differently. And what I found that I do that not a lot of people do is like I try and get people to come in to do photos and videos, and I'll pay for that out of my own money rather than you know, ask people, well, tell bands you have to bring your own things. So that kind of gets the messages coming in. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, the role of my company is kind of ever changing, and it's more management side now to the events.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because obviously there's quite a reasonable event focus. I think it's fair to say, like you got the gig on the 7th, you got another one coming up in March.
Yeah.
But then also just in general, I suppose a lot of like management companies might not be doing what you're doing, where you're sort of trying to have more of an active social media presence. So like, what was the idea behind that?
Yeah, so I was like, sat down after I did 3 gigs in December, and I was like, right, had Christmas, what can I do this year to grow my business? And I kind of noticed that there's a lot of gatekeeping within the industry of knowledge, and I was like, we shouldn't be doing this. Everyone should be helping each other, because otherwise no one's gonna grow. You know, if there's no room for knowledge, there's no room for growth. So it's kind of like, how can I make my platform useful and helpful and supportive and an encouraging page for people? So it's kind of like, let's start sharing knowledge, start sharing experiences, advice, positive experiences, negative experiences, you name it. And I was just kind of sat down for a week, made a load of content for January, and was like, here we go. And then yesterday I sat down and made a load of content for February, which comes out next week.
Yeah.
But
I mean, so do you schedule a lot of your content then?
oh yeah, scheduling is a game changer. I hate waking up and thinking, what can I post today? So I just do it on a Sunday evening. I'm like, spend about half an hour, 40 minutes, and then I've done like my post for the week. And it's, don't have to think, it does.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I've only started doing recently with Sound Advice and the different pages and stuff. And it really is such a game changer because
Yeah.
like, I think when you're doing it on the fly, it's almost like you almost always feel busy because you've always got something to do that day that you like, maybe you haven't got time to do that day. And then you're like, you got to go to the toilet and do an Instagram post. I did that literally the other day. And yeah, I think as well, like things like captions are really important to like
Oh yeah,
growing your
definitely.
Instagram. And like, I suppose, yeah, like when you do them all at once, when you're scheduling, you sort of get into the mindset of like writing captions. Whereas I think what often happens, and you might have a similar experience, which I used to do a lot, is because I'd be writing captions when I wrote the post. So I'd be like, I need to post this video or something. I'd get it all ready and then I'd be like, right, I need a caption. Type something in on my phone and then like post it and not really think about it enough. Whereas you don't really even need to spend much more time doing it when you schedule, but you're just in that mindset where you're in a creative place where you can come up with captions that are going to be engaging.
Definitely, like you said, you get in the rhythm of things, and it's like, instead of sitting there thinking for 20 minutes, it's like, oh, I've got a great caption for this next post, this video. It just comes easy. It's like one thing after another after another.
Yeah, definitely. So you're mentioning how many events you're doing at the moment. Is what do you sort of make of the Liverpool scene at the moment? It's something I've asked a couple of the guests, but like, what would you sort of say is like the state of the scene at the moment? If that makes sense.
I think it's
Bit of a broad
exciting.
one,
It's very exciting, I think, at the minute. There's a lot of really good new bands and artists coming out of the scene. I think a lot aren't getting the exposure because they're literally at the beginning of their careers. If you're out and you're going to gigs and you're watching new people, you're looking on Instagram, you'll find there's some really, really talented people in the city. And we're seeing bands also like that started off local, small, going and doing bigger things. Like Kairos is a great example. They're lovely lads, and so when I moved here and I met them, they were like at a really exciting point of their career. And over the past 2 years that I've kind of known them, I've seen them like go and support like James, do UK tour, do some really like cool things. And it shows like, if you really put your mind to it, even just in Liverpool, there are opportunities there to go and do it.
Yeah. Do you think you mentioned there being a lot of talented people, there definitely are. Do you think there are like some restrictions in Liverpool to like success?
I think in terms of, there's a very small like promoter scene, very small venue scene. You can get stuck in playing the same venue with the same promoter. Like that issue we spoke about before, you could do it every week, There's a lack of that. And that's nothing to do with like the scene or the people's fault. It's literally a case of money and funding and not enough backing behind arts. So there's like a lack there, and obviously a lack of like, we do have some independent labels, but we don't have any majors in the city. We don't have a lot of independent labels. We've got things like Centric and Publishing that are in the city, but again, there's not a lot of those things. Whereas I could imagine if you went to London, you could probably turn a corner and there'd be a new label down every road. Not literally, but yeah.
Yeah. What's my favorite thought again? Again, this happens, isn't it? Because I don't phrase those questions based on like the DTR. So do you think like I think one of the problems is that I think a lot of bands feel like they get stuck on like the circuit where because you said there's only a few venues and they feel like they're sort of playing the same venues again and again and can't like move upwards. Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah. I think it is really easy to get stuck in a venue or in the same circuit of venues with the same promoters. And at that point, you kind of need to sit down and think, why aren't I growing? And look at it from like a really critically analyse your career, as difficult as that is. Sit down and think, is it the music, is it the live show, or is it my lack of network? Which everyone hates the term network, but it is the thing that's your like key factor in making you grow. You might be a great artist, have great tunes, bring loads of people down to a show, but be stuck playing the same venue every week. And it is a case of you're lacking the people you know. So it's a case of like getting out there, meeting people, reaching out on social media, email, like me, just get on your emails. Don't be afraid to just talk to people you don't know. I know that sounds really easy to do, but once you start doing it, it does get easier.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I used to be really bad at networking, so I can attest the fact that it does get easier. I think as well, there are some people who are naturally good at networking, and I don't think those are the people to get networking advice from.
Yeah.
Because I think some people just find it really easy and can just like go up and talk to anyone. And like, I know that's not me, and it's not a lot of people. But I think one of the things that I've learned is, firstly, just like practicing it, like going to like, say like an industry event if you can get to one, and like just like speaking to like everyone there and just being like, I'm going to get like 20 emails or something. And then another thing would be like to have a reason to like speak to them, if you know what I mean, and like have a value to give in. Because I think it makes it a lot more nerve-wracking going to like speak to someone who say works in radio or something. If you kind of feel like the imposter syndrome where you feel like you got nothing to say and you got nothing to bring. And I mean, I've done it with like having a podcast where I can DM you and then you're going to turn up at Arts Bar Baltic and we're going to have a nice chat and get to know each other. So that's like a vehicle for like conversations. But like, I think even like going up to people when I'm not recording or something, having something where I'm like, oh, I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing this, having like a clear idea of what you're doing and what like value you're going to bring to the conversation, I think is really important.
Yeah, 100%. I think you've summed it up really well there. Going to networking events, conferences and things is all good, but you really need to, before you step foot in the room, think, what are the like main things I want to achieve out of this? So like you said, getting 20 emails, going up and asking someone what they do, or, set a goal. And it kind of makes it easier because your mind, rather than focusing on embarrassing yourself and the person, you're set on like, oh, I need to get these emails, so I'll just ask them what they had for breakfast and it'll go from there, or,
Yeah. So for artists who are like managing themselves, what sort of tips would you have to make that whole process easier?
Get really organised. Organisation is a massive key. Like, there's an artist that I work with called Faye, and she's great. Like, I've never met a person so organised. She may not think it either, but conversations we've had, like she's so organised with content. She's like, yep, got my content done for like 3 months. And it's like, wow, I can't even think 3 months ahead, let alone get posts done for then. Set like little targets as well. You need small targets to achieve the big ones and achieve those big dreams. You can't just be like, I want to be signed to a major, that's me, and not have a roadmap for it. Or at least you don't have to stick to the roadmap, but having one helps. It narrows it, it makes it more clear. And understand knowledge is a massive one. Try and understand as much about every role, everything that you can. Knowledge is power.
And you can do that by listening to the backlog of episodes we have on Sound Advice.